Hi, everyone. We'll just give it another 30 seconds to see if anyone else joins us, and then we'll get started. Okay, numbers look stabilized, and it's 12:01 by my clock, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar dedicated to the Master of Finance Toronto program. This is a 12-month program that starts each June. The classes are taught in person out of our Smith Toronto campus in downtown Toronto. And the flexible schedule allows you to complete this full master's degree from Queen's University without having to leave your current job. So hopefully some of you on the call today are interested in learning more about the program and the application process. So this will be a great opportunity, I think, for you to do both. And just before we dive into the presentation today, we here at Queen's University think it's very important to begin these sessions with a land acknowledgement. So we would like to acknowledge that Smith Toronto is situated on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River, and that we are very grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. And not on the call with us today is Gary Hines, and I just wanted to mention Gary and introduce you to him. Gary Hines is the Associate Director of the program, and he leads the regular info session. So we will be hosting another regular info session later this month, I think March 26th. So if you'd like to register for that session to get a more comprehensive overview and a chance to ask any questions you'd like to Gary, please do visit the website, go to the information sessions tab to register for that upcoming session. And also, if you do end up in the application process, Gary will be the one you speak to when you get to the interview stage. So it's always nice to put a name to the face. So moving on to the agenda for today. So my name is Alex, and I'm the program's recruitment advisor, and I'm joined today by my colleague Jen Maher, and Jen's the program's application advisor. So some of you may already be in touch with Jen or myself. So we'll be doing the presentation today. I'll kick things off. I'll go over a bit of a program overview, and then we'll move on to the application session. So Jen will join me for that. She'll introduce herself. We'll go over some application tips. We'll go over some frequently asked questions, and then we'll leave time for your questions at the end. So on that note, we do have the Q&A enabled on the webinar, so you can go ahead and type your questions in there as we go. And we'll probably save some of them for the end. We may answer some of them as we go, so just feel free to put your questions in there. And the recording will be distributed to everybody who registers for the webinar within the next couple of days. So if you registered but you weren't able to attend, have no fear. Just keep your eye out on your email inbox for an email from us within the next few days, and it'll link you to the recording of the session. That will also take you to our Queen's Smith School of Business YouTube channel, and you'll see the playlist there for this program as well as all our other programs. So that's a great resource in terms of we do special content webinars dedicated to special topics in addition to just the general info session. So definitely worth checking out the Master Finance Toronto playlist for some of the past sessions we've done, including a session on financing the program and other topics. So, as I mentioned, my name is Alex Yealland. I'm the program's recruitment advisor. So my role is really to work with people before they've started the application process. So you may be at the point where you're still researching programs, you want a little more information about this program, or you're not quite sure if you're eligible, or you're not quite sure if you're a good fit. So that's kind of my role, is to help you answer those questions, provide information. We can set up a call so you can learn a bit more. And then if you do decide that, yes, I think this is the right program for me and I'm ready to apply, that's when Jen Mayer would take over. So Jen would be your application advisor, and she'd be the one working with you step by step through the application process. And she's really there to help guide you through the process and also help you present as strong an application as possible. So just a quick program overview. So as I mentioned, the program is delivered out of our Smith Toronto campus. That's in downtown Toronto, about a block from Union Station. It starts just once each year in June. The classes are live in-person classes taught out of that Smith Toronto campus. And the weekly schedule is a weeknight evening class and then a weekend class every other weekend. So that's the kind of flexible weekly schedule, allows you to continue working while you're completing the degree. That said, there are the 2 in-person sessions. You can see there 1 week in Kingston at the start of the program and a shorter session in Toronto midway through. So those are the 2 times during the year where you will come on campus and be a full-time student. And for the remainder of the year, you'll be taking those regular bi-weekly classes. And we do offer obviously ongoing coaching, career support, as well as experiential learning opportunities. I'll mention a bit more about those in a minute. So in terms of what the program provides, what are you going to get out of doing a full Master of Finance program? You're going to get a deeper and broader understanding of finance. You're going to get the knowledge and tools to move immediately from theory to real world applications. So a lot of people are going to come into the program with CFA level 1, or maybe they're even full charter holders. And this program is really designed to take that theory and put it into practice. So it's a very practical hands-on application. We want to teach you communication skills. You can communicate your ideas. We want to train you to work in a high performance team, which is a very important part of the program, and team-based learning, personal development, and of course, opportunities to jobs through our Career Advancement Center. In terms of the curriculum, you can see the core courses listed there on the screen. You can also find the curriculum again on the program website. You can just head back there, go to the curriculum tab. You'll see all these courses listed there with a brief description of each one. And then we also do have some electives. So these are the current electives. You get to pick 2. Now we are working on some curriculum updates. So that's another reason to go back and register for that upcoming info session. Gary may have some more information that he's going to share in that session about the curriculum updates, or he may let you know when that information is going to become available. So that's exciting stuff. So definitely worth keeping in touch with us for any announcements on the curriculum. And then the experiential learning piece that I mentioned. So competitions, including the CFA Ethics Challenge, CFA Research Challenge, the Ben Berkham Small Cap Case Competition, National Investment Banking Competition, and then the clubs, the Executive Club, the Women in Finance Club, and QUAF, which is the Alternative Asset Fund. So lots of ways to get involved experientially while you're in the program. And for those who may be in the program having just CFA 1, we do have optional workshops, prep workshops for CFA level 2 and level 3. So those are other great opportunities you can take advantage of when you're in the program. Now, who takes the program? What's the class profile look like? So here's kind of a history and overview of the program to date. So the program's been running, we're in our 13th year this year, so over 2,000 graduates. So it's one of our longest, oldest programs with tons of alumni, which is always great. An extensive alumni network is a great bonus, especially when you're looking at that career side of things. Typically, the class profile has been about 1/3 women, 2/3 men. We'd love to get that up to more par, and so that's something we're always working on. About 20% international each year, average 5 to 6 years of work experience, 30 years of age roughly, and you can see some of the careers that our graduates have gone on to take. Now, the on-site session, so here's a picture of Goods Hall. So this is our beautiful main campus for the Smith School of Business at Queen's University in Kingston. So this is Smith's main campus, in addition to the Smith Toronto campus that we have in Toronto. So this is where you'll be coming for that first on-site session in June. And here's a little look at what a typical on-site session week looks like. So as you see, you'll be doing a lot of core courses during this week, typically completing 1 or often parts of 2 full courses during the week. You'll have a chance to connect with the Career Advancement Center. You'll have a chance to connect with your coaches. You'll be doing some fun events like the Smith Challenge, dinner and trivia, lots of great food. And so it's a fun week in addition to a week full of learning, and obviously just a great opportunity to really connect with your classmates, get to know each other, get to meet each other, and a great way to kick off the program. And then finally, the career side of things. So we do offer extensive career support through our Career Advancement Center. So you can book one-on-one sessions with them while you're in the program. They can do career strategy and planning with you, career direction, job search strategy, salary negotiations, help you work on your resume, help you work on your interview skills, and they have a whole bunch of other career resources available. So that's something that's bundled together for you in the program. So I always encourage you to take full advantage of those resources. You're paying for them while you're in the program. So certainly leverage those, book in with the CAC so you can do some one-on-one sessions, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. In terms of fees, you can see fees for both domestic and international students listed there on the screen. For Ontario-based students, the program is OSAP eligible. We do have some scholarships available, so we can provide you more. Jen or myself can provide you more information on those when we're in touch with you directly. And those fees are all inclusive, so they do include all the costs for all your learning materials, your tuition, your books, and the meals and accommodations and activity costs for all your activities during those weeks when you're on campus for the on-site sessions. Um, so your only additional cost for the on-site session is just your transportation to and from the location, for example, to and from Kingston for the Kingston session. And actually, sometimes people become such good friends during that week that they end up carpooling together back to Toronto. So maybe don't even book your return ticket, just wait and see if you end up finding a buddy to travel back with. So at this point, I'll hand things over to my colleague, Jen, and Jen's going to come in and introduce herself and tell you a bit more about the application process. So over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you everyone for being here today. Appreciate you taking the time to attend the session. So as Alex mentioned, I'm an application advisor. So I work across a number of different programs, and the Masters of Finance being one of them. So once you decide if you want to start a preliminary assessment, which is simply just submitting a copy of your resume, that will then get things started, and you'll then be working with me. And my role, as Alex mentioned, is to ultimately be there for you to support you in preparing the strongest application when it comes time for you to be in front of the admissions committee. So I will then review your application at the preliminary stage and then outline the next steps if everything looks great at that point. Admissions, what we are looking for, so this is sort of at a minimum what we're looking for, is you need to have completed an undergraduate degree. We also like to see 2 years of relevant work experience, which is also beneficial to yourself because this is a practical program. So if you are already working within a finance role, that is going to be very valuable for yourself as well as your company. Also, we are looking for either the GMAT, GRE, or completion of the CFA level 1. We do have some exceptions where if you do have a wealth of work experience, you've completed, for example, like an MBA, we do provide the odd exemption to that. However, and keep in mind when you are submitting your application, I'm always looking for those exemptions for you on your behalf. So I'll let you know up front whether or not it will be required. We're also looking for 2 references. So these references are typically people who one person would be a colleague, one would be a superior. Some people do have one academic as well as one professional. They are electronic, so you just provide the name and email, and I email them a form. And understanding they are most likely busy working professionals, we've made it quite easy and simple for them to complete this. So it should take 5 or 10 minutes. They complete it and it generates right back into your file. Of course, a resume, your most up-to-date resume, as well as a cover letter. So this cover letter is same format as you'd use to apply to a job. It's your opportunity to express sort of why you're interested in the program, what you hope to get out of it, and what you'll bring to the program as well. So as everything comes together, the last piece is an interview with the director, Gary Hines. So this interview is about 30 minutes in length. It's a Zoom interview, and it's essentially at this point, we understand you've met the requirements of the program. So it's a conversation around, fit for yourself and whether you're get fit in the program as well on our end. So it's a nice conversation to have just to ensure that, this all makes sense for you to move forward. You'll see there on the right there, it says less than 2 years of work experience. So we do also accept those that might have some internships. Maybe you've got your CFA level 1. So we see a strong academic background with maybe a little bit of work experience, but maybe doesn't meet the 2 years. So don't count yourself out if you don't hit that 2 years of minimum work experience, because worst case scenario, we would say, you know what, we just want you to gain another year or so. And we could even continue your application at that time. It wouldn't even mean necessarily that we'd have to close out the application. So then once everything is complete, you've had your interview, your file then goes to the admissions committee for review, and they typically provide a feedback within 5 to 10 days. So we can actually pull all of this together very quickly. It's June's just around the corner, so I'm moving very, very quickly with people at this point. So you'll be working with me quite closely, and throughout this process, I'm constantly providing any necessary feedback to ensure that, as I mentioned earlier, that you've got a very strong application. So yeah, so now we're gonna, Alex and I are gonna go over some application tips with you. So these are just sort of little tips to help ensure that you're putting your best foot forward in terms of completing your application and what the committee's gonna see on their end. So I can start things off, Alex. This is a big one. People might not think it is, but completing your application with 1 or 2 weeks, it's very possible. You know, considering you've completed, say, the CFA or the GMAT, we could pull an application together in 2 days quite easily. So this just looks favorably because it shows your commitment. It shows you've got drive to, move forward, that you're excited for the program. And keeping in mind, it is a competitive program and spots are limited. So sort of when those spots are filled, they're filled and we start then recruiting for the following year.
Great, thanks, Jen. So maybe I'll take the next one in terms of the application document. So one document that we do require is an official transcript. So that's something you can look at ahead of time. You don't need to wait until you're already in touch with Jen and then ask Jen, how do I get my transcript? If you're a domestic student, most universities can now send transcripts electronically. So they just send them to us directly by email. So what you have to do is go to the registrar's office or email them at your home institution, request an electronic transcript, pay a small fee, and they'll send it right to us. So that's a great service. It means it's really quick. And so a transcript should never be something that's going to slow down your application as a domestic student. That's something that we can get within typically a day or two once you put in that request. Now, for international students, if your degree was completed outside of North America, we do typically need a course-by-course WES assessment. And again, that's something that can take some time to be processed, all right? WES processing times vary, but they do typically take several weeks. So that's something, knowing ahead of time that you're going to be required to do the WES just means the earlier you get the WES started, the earlier your WES is going to be completed and will receive your report. And again, you don't want that to be something that slows you down in terms of meeting that application timing for, the June start. So things you can prepare ahead of time just so that you hit the ground running. And once you're working with Jen, you have all your ducks in a row and you're ready to finalize your application.
Yes, that's a very important one too, because as you mentioned, the West can take some time. So getting on top of that is helpful for sure. The resume and cover letter. So the way I would sort of look at this is that, think of yourself as when you're applying for a job. You're going to tweak your resume so that you're looking strong for that job. So you're going to want to do the same thing for when we're applying to the program. So updating it, ensuring that you have all everything included, whether it's like an internship or something you volunteered for that's might be finance related. And in your cover letter too, just highlighting all those things, your interest in the program, what your past experience in within finance, and any little thing that is relevant whatsoever to include and to just sort of gear it towards the program, just as I mentioned, like you would for a specific job that you're applying to as well.
Great. And so in terms of references, again, that's just something you can prepare ahead of time so it doesn't slow you down. So think about, who am I going to ask for references from? Think about the strongest referees you have, right? So the people you've worked with most closely, who you're really confident will give you a strong reference. A weak reference is someone who fills out the form, but they just give the bare minimum in terms of answers, right? A stronger reference is someone who really speaks in more detail to the capacity in which they've worked with you, to your strengths, to your weaknesses. They rate you as above average or outstanding on a bunch of metrics. That's a really strong reference. So don't just think about someone who, is convenient for you. Think about someone who's going to be the strongest reference, and that person may be a busy person. So the more advanced notice you can give them that, hey, heads up, I may ask you for a reference in a couple of weeks. I'm applying to this program. Is that okay? Let them know, and then they'll be quicker to give us that reference. And the stronger the reference, the better, obviously, for your application.
Yeah, and the last point here for the interview. So a big piece of advice would be to review the website, understand the sort of the schedule, like the fees. You don't want to go into the interview not knowing these basic sort of that basic sort of information around the program, like be aware of the on-site sessions, the dates coming to Kingston to ensure that, you will be able to be there in person for that week, is very, very important. Planning, a couple, like 2 to 3 questions, what will, and maybe you already have 2 or 3 questions at that time that, you want to ask, and you want to ask that to the director. It makes, shows enthusiasm. It shows that you're very interested as well. To be successful during the program, and just remember to use, sorry, I'm just during the program and after graduation, to remember to use your own words as well, right? So you want to be yourself in this interview. Don't come in, trying to put on a face. Just be yourself, because that way you will be successful throughout the program. Um, we're very much, as I mentioned, a fit is a huge part of the program. So ensuring that we are going to meet your expectations and vice versa is extremely important.
Yes, that's totally correct. And we live in this new AI world. So sometimes it's appropriate to use, AI and other software to generate answers for you, but in this case, it's not. And part of the reason is that the interview process is a chance for us to authentically get to know you, and the directors want to get to know you. So they want to hear your own words, your own responses. So yeah, don't use any software when you're in the interview. Be relaxed, feel confident, feel comfortable. It's really more of a get to know you than a test you interview. So just a little piece of advice there on the technology side. Okay, so final slide for us, and then we'll hand it over to you for your questions, any questions people may have. So we have some FAQs here. So maybe I'll start off and I'll ask Jen number one. Jen, how do people determine if they're even eligible for the program?
I would say simply reach out to yourself or myself. You provide a resume, and we can have a quick look at it, and quite quickly we can typically determine whether or not you meet the requirements of the program. And then if there's any at that time, any questions that, sometimes there's questions that we need to probe to get more information out of you, and then we can sort of determine at that time.
And following up on that, a really common question we get is a waiver. So people are often curious about, is it possible to get a waiver for CFA, GMAT, GRE? If so, what are the conditions? So I think it's worth taking a minute just to go over that. So essentially, Gary Hines, it's good that we mentioned Gary a few times on the call today, because Gary does have a very important role in the application process in terms of making some key decisions. So one of which may be a waiver. So Jen, what would you say that Gary looks for when he's assessing somebody to see if they may be a potential candidate for a waiver?
Yeah, so he's typically looking at your academic and background. So, he likes to see if you've got strong grades, if you have something like an MBA, that's going to help as well, and a wealth of work experience. So we need to see a combination of both, because ultimately we need to ensure that you're going to be successful throughout the program. So the CFA, the GMAT, the GRE are tools we use to assess the successfulness of those going through the program. So we would need to see a strong academic and um, professional background. And as I mentioned earlier, when I'm reviewing files, I'm always keeping that in mind. So I'm always trying to, of course, save anybody from having to go back and obtain one of these tests. So I'll identify right up front if I believe that you are eligible for a waiver for these.
And I think that's an important component to consider as well. And so we always encourage people to start the application process early, as early as possible. Because let's say, for example, that you're going to require the CFA level one in order to be eligible for the program. So that's something you have to start back planning to say, okay, when can I write the CFA? When am I going to get my results? Am I going to get them before June when the program starts, right? You have to start thinking about that well in advance, or whether you're going to do the GMAT or the GRE. It's a similar scenario. So again, don't wait until, it's May and then realize, oh no, I now have to try to prep for the GMAT. It's too late. Plan ahead of time so that by the time you get to the application phase, you're really ready to go. And on that note, in terms of deadlines, it is a rolling admission. So we do assess, Jen will assess applicants that she receives on a rolling basis, but we do have some sort of internal cutoffs in terms of, once the program is full leading up to June, we'll have finalized the class, typically at least a month before the start of the program. And for international students, we have to factor in visa processing time. So we have to cut off international applicants, typically 2 to 3 months at least prior to the start of the program. So we do have those kinds of internal deadlines. So again, I think the overall recommendation is the earlier you start your application, the better. And there's no application fees, right? So there's no risk to you in getting started. So you can sort of start working on your application, start working with Jen, getting those documents together. And so, yeah, start early. And in terms of how long that process takes, Jen, you mentioned it can be pretty quick, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, especially at this point too, we aren't, for example, if you are you did complete your undergraduate degree internationally, as long as you've started that process and everything else is in, then I would continue to move forward and move you right to an interview. So it can take, anywhere from say 2 days. It depends again on if your references have the availability to complete the forms, but I would say the average is about like 5 days it will take to submit your application.
In terms of GPA, this is a common question we get. We get people say, my undergrad GPA wasn't as strong as I wish it was. Does that automatically disqualify me? Do you have a like exact minimum GPA? So, Jen, what would you say to that question?
So that's an interesting question. So I would, if someone was really, really hard on saying like, what is the minimum GPA? I would say 2.5. We are, however, looking at other items as well. So the CFA, the GMAT, the GRE can offset that. So if you did not do as well as you had hoped in your undergrad, um, one of those tests can actually help strengthen your file as well. The committee is going to be looking at your career progression too. So it's sort of a combination. We take a holistic approach, but we certainly would not want to see anything lower than a 2.5.
Great. That's a great bit of feedback, Jen. So in terms of the next common question, we get work experience. So we say on the website, sort of you need a minimum 2 years. The average, you saw the class profile there, it's more like 5 to 6 years is sort of the average. So if someone is at the lower end of that, but they maybe also have some previous internships or co-ops, could they still be considered, Jen? What would you say?
Yes, absolutely. So again, in combination with if you've got a CFA level one or an extremely strong GMAT, but in that coupled with a couple of different internships, maybe you're part of some other types of finance groups as well. Yes, again, that goes back to that holistic sort of approach where if you've got, other areas where you've shown you've gained experience in finance, that will certainly help, and we would consider that.
And I think if you are someone who's a bit more junior and you say, "Oh, I have to wait another year before I'm eligible for the program," you kind of get down on that. But then if you think about it from the career side, like the advantage of doing a professional program is you're gaining that work experience while you're studying, right? So you're doubling up on your learning almost as if it was like a co-op program, right? Because you're learning at work, you're putting what you're learning at work into your class projects for the program and vice versa, right? So you're doubling up, and think about who you're going to meet when you're in a program like this. Like whether if you're in a full-time study program, let's say from undergrad, you go right into a master's degree, you're probably going to be mostly working with other students who are doing the same thing, right? So it's going to be you and a lot of other students who have basically just been in school and you haven't been out working yet, versus doing a program like this, even though you may have to wait another year, you're going to be learning with more working professionals who are already working in fields, are already connected in the finance industry. You're going to be networking with people who are already out there and have good contacts. So when you think about it from the career side of things, it may really be worth your while to, even if you do have to wait an extra year, by the time you graduate, you may be really well positioned from a career perspective. And I'd say the same for international students. Coming to Canada is a big commitment, and you may be new to Canada and looking for a job. So doing a program like this, where you're going to be in class with people who are already in Canada and already connected in industry and working, your classmates are going to be a huge resource to you in terms of your job search while you're in Canada. So in terms of additional certifications, diplomas, coursework people have done, Jen, is that something that they can also add to their application to help strengthen it?
Yes, absolutely. So anything that you do have in addition to, submitting the typical sort of documents we're looking for will only help strengthen your application. So feel free to exactly if you've got certificates that you've earned, then that will, yes, absolutely help strengthen your file. It just sets you apart too from other individuals who may not have done that as well.
And do they need official transcripts from those additional courses or really just for the undergraduate degree?
Yeah, I would say for those because they're not necessarily required. Just like a copy is fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be official.
Perfect. In terms of the weekly time commitment, I usually hear 15 to 20 hours is sort of a ballpark that directors tend to mention. Have you heard the same, Jen, or up to 25?
Yeah, I think, I have to agree with what you're saying. 15 to 20 is like average, like some weeks it might be more, weeks it may be less. I think it depends on what course you're taking and your strength within that sort of area that they're teaching too. You might be breezing, you might just fly through a course and you might have challenges with another course that you're not as familiar with. But yeah, I think saying 15 to 20 is a bit the average.
Yeah, if you're
And that
looking at it.
again, that does include class time. Sorry, that includes your class time. So the time outside of that's about 2 hours or so, 2 to 3 a day outside of
And
class.
and because it is a team-based program, you will need to set aside time to connect with your team to work on those team-based projects, and that's a pretty significant amount of your coursework are those team-based projects. So getting in sync with your team, syncing up your schedules, and figuring out what your workflow is going to be is a really important part to your team's success. So again, think about not just your own schedule and your family and your personal life, but also you're going to have to coordinate with your teammates as well. So just sort of be prepared to think about, how much flexibility you're gonna need to be able to have while you're in the program. Okay, final question, and we'll turn it over to the Q&A. Is the program considered full-time, and is it eligible for a student visa and a postgraduate work permit? Jen, what's the good answer?
Yes. So this program is considered full-time. So even though you look at the schedule, you think, oh, it's a part-time program. As we mentioned, the combination of the hours that you're going to be putting in and the class time, the workload is equal to a full-time program. And it does allow that, therefore, it does allow international students to apply for a study visa and a postgraduate work permit as well. So that's great news on all fronts. So yeah, yep.
Yeah, and we got some really great news. I guess it was past year, they actually extended the length of that postgraduate work permit. So it used to be more like a 1-year program might get a 1-year work permit. Now they've extended that up to a 3-year postgraduate work permit for the 12-month program. So that's really great. That allows you a lot more time in Canada after the program if you do want to stay and work. And sometimes people also ask, do I need to be working while I'm in the program? Like, is it mandatory? And while it's mandatory to have some work experience to be eligible for the program, there may be situations in which you're not working fully while you're in the program, right? You may be pivoting, making a career change, or maybe if you're an international student, you're arriving in Canada and you're going to be looking for work while you're here. So it's not like it's necessarily mandatory that you are working. But again, that's where the Career Advancement Center, I think, would come in with those career supports while you're in the program. Okay, time for your questions. So you see a QR code there on the screen. I do believe that takes you to the application form. So if you feel like Jen has motivated you and you're ready to get started, you can scan that and go fill out the online application form. And that's the quickest way to get your application started. Yeah, so now we're at the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, type them in. I do see ones come in already. Will the recording of this webinar be available later? I missed the beginning and would love to catch up. Great question. Thanks for that, and thanks for joining us. The answer is yes, we will be sending out the recording to everybody registered within the next few business days. So whether you were able to attend live or not, we'll be sending out the recording. And again, those recordings are available all the time on our YouTube channel as well. So if you're really anxious and you don't want to wait, you can just go over to YouTube and look up Smith School of Business, find the Master of Finance Toronto playlist. And once the recording is uploaded there, it usually takes us a day or two to get it uploaded. It'll still be available there as well. So Thanks for that question. We'll just give it a minute to see if there are any other questions. And if not, we'll wish everyone the best rest of their afternoon. Jen, did you have any common questions you wanted to go over before we let people go?
Sure I do. I feel like we've covered most of the common questions.
Oh,
Okay.
maybe I
Actually,
have
here's
one
another
for
one.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and before we do that one, what about the upcoming June intake? Are applications still open?
Absolutely. Applications are still open. We are seeing quite an influx right now. So if you are hoping to join the program this June, I would strongly advise you to reach out to Alex or myself, and we'll start the process. But yes, we're definitely still accepting for this June.
Perfect. Okay, another question. Do you have any entrance scholarships? So maybe I'll turn that one over to you, Jen.
Yes, we do actually. So that is also another good reason to apply sooner than later. They are limited, so we do offer typically $1,000 to $3,000. So they are based on merit based. So when you have, and you don't actually have to apply. So once you've had your interview, and your file goes to the admissions committee for consideration at that time, they will determine whether or not you do qualify, and you'll be notified within your acceptance letter. So again, they're limited. So if the sooner you apply, the better, because then, once they're gone, they're gone. And I think that answers the second question there.
Hmm.
Does Smith offer any scholarships for MFin? We do actually have Black and Indigenous scholarships as well that people are able to apply to. So for every program within our portfolio, we offer one scholarship for each scholarship amount for each scholarship, and it is the amount of $10,000. That is something you do have to apply to on the side, but when we're moving through the process, I'll ask you at some point in time, if you are Black or Indigenous, let me know, because then I can provide you with the next steps.
And while we're talking about financing, OSAP is another common area that we get questions about. So people wonder, like, when can I start my OSAP application? Do I have to wait until I'm in the program? So Jen and I, we don't work for OSAP, we work at Smith. So we're sort of limited in how much advising we can do on things that are external to Smith, but I think we can just speak from our experience from what we've seen from other applicants. So my experience is that you can sort of do a preliminary, like you can start an OSAP application to get a sense of how much, like a rough estimate of how much funding may be available to you, but you'll need to be enrolled in the program before you can fully finalize your OSAP application. And I think, again, earlier the better. So if you have any questions about OSAP, you can reach out to the Queens Central Financial Office. You can contact OSAP by phone. So you try to find out as much information you can as early on in the process about what the deadlines are. And then you'll have a better chance of getting your funding issued to you, in a timely manner. Jen, do you have any other OSAP tips for people?
Uh, no, aside from starting the application as soon as possible,
Yeah.
because again, that can take some time as well.
Okay, great. Another question here. If I take the GMAT at the end of April, is there any chance we could shoot it for the June 2025 session? Cutting it pretty close. What would you say, Jen?
Definitely we can. It is leaving it very close to the start. I would always suggest, I think right now end of March is probably the latest I'd leave it. However, I understand that some people do need a little more time to prepare, and that's important. So I would just ensure the remainder of your file is complete. So once that GMAT is you've written that GMAT, it's the last piece to fall in your application, and then we move right to an interview.
Perfect. So we'll just give it 10 seconds to see if there are any other questions, and then we'll let everyone go. But I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you did find the session informative. And again, you can scan that QR code that'll take you to the program website, the application form. But while you're there, you can also, click around and look at the schedule. You can look at the fees and financing page. You can look at the curriculum page. There's a contact us form if you want to contact us for more feedback. There's a virtual one-on-one if you'd like to request a call. So there's a variety of ways you can get in touch with us right from the website, in addition to the application form. And again, just to mention again, we are hosting another info session later this month. So if you are on the program website, go to the information sessions tab and you'll see the info session there. We're also doing a live in-person info session this month in Toronto at Smith Toronto, and that's a info session for all the Smith programs. So I think Dean McEwen, the director of the technical programs, will be hosting that. So if you did want to come down to Smith Toronto to attend that live event and have a chance to meet some other people there, that would be a great opportunity to do that. So definitely recommend. You can find the dates and the registration information for that at the information sessions page of the program website. Great. So I don't see any more questions. So I think that means we've done our job and answered some. So I'd just like to, again, thank you, Jen, so much for joining me today.
Oh, of course. And thank you, Alex. And thank you everyone for attending. I hope you found that to be helpful and look forward to hopefully working with you soon.
Thanks, everyone.